What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video. In this one, it's the Game Week 4 preview where I'm going to go through a bunch of your questions and hopefully help you with your FPL decisions. So if you enjoyed the video, make sure to give it a like and hit that subscribe button. And if you haven't already set up a draft through Sleeper, make sure you do. It's completely free. There are links in the description below. I'm going to talk through my draft experience later on in the video. All right, let's start with a question about Liverpool. So if going triple Liverpool, would you go double defence or double attack? So we're going to assume that most people would pick Salah and Trent as two of the best options in that Liverpool team. I think I would go double defence. And the reason for that is the midfield options outside of Liverpool are absolutely stacked. So it's not a case that I think Diaz and Jota are terrible options, although I am still finding it difficult to get out of my mind that with Champions League and stuff like that coming up, we could see earlier substitutions and maybe a little bit of rotation. I think it's pretty clear that Salah, Jota and Diaz is the front three right now. But at some point, could Gakpo play on the left? Could Darwin play centrally? It's possible. So that's playing on my mind as well. But the main reason is the midfield options outside of Liverpool. Like if I was building a team this week, I'd probably want Salah, preferably one of Palmer or Saka if I could fit them in. Eze would be in because I still think he's great value. And from Game Week 6 onwards, Mbeumo looks decent as well. So you've already got 4 of the 5 spots taken up. And if you're trying to fit in like double Liverpool defence and Salah, maybe Haaland as well, one of those other premium midfielders, your last midfielder probably has to be a lot cheaper than kind of 7.6 million, which is what Diaz and Jota are. Now, there's quite a few options in defence as well. Obviously, you've got Vardiol at Man City. Ake went off injured last night, so he's pretty much nailed at this point. Porro's good. You've got Arsenal defenders from Game Week 6. There's 4.5 million defenders like Rico Lewis at the moment. I know he's gone up a little bit, right, but he's in and around that price. People like Robinson, Dunk, Konza if he's fit, etc. But I just think if I was building midfield this week on Wildcard, I'd probably be able to just lock in 4 of my 5 players right now, and they probably wouldn't include Liverpool players, and so I'd have more space for Trent and Robinson. I don't think there's a right or wrong answer here, but I just think in terms of how I would build a squad, I'd choose the double defence because of the other players outside of Liverpool that I'd want to pick. So during the international break, I took part in a Premier League fantasy draft game with other content creators over on Sleeper, which is completely free, by the way. And if you want to download it and set up a draft with your friends, you can just click that link in the description below or scan the QR code on screen. And I just want to talk through my experience of the draft because it's not something that I've played all that much. Now, I'll be honest, I'm a massive player of Fantasy Premier League, as you might have realised, but I've always been a little bit sceptical about playing draft games, but this one was a lot of fun, I think for a couple of reasons. One, it was super easy to use. You can do it on your mobile from the comfort of your own sofa if you want to. I did it on my iPad. And the key reason for me is I'm in a league with people that are super competitive. All the content creators are playing for money for charity. For me, it's Modric in Ireland who rehome dogs. And that just makes it so much more competitive because you want to win that money. There's something riding on it. And that's the same reason I got into FPL. I got invited to a mini league with my friends. I had to win it. And then I got hooked. And I think that's the same with drafts. So if you've got other friends that are super competitive, they're the people to play with. And you can set it up with different amounts of people. So if you want to go with like 6, 8, 10, whatever it might be, you can set the draft however you want. And it's super customizable as well. So there's points for like tackles and stuff like that. But for us, because we're all FPL managers, we're setting the scoring so it's exactly the same. So 5 points for a goal for a midfielder, 4 points for a forward, etc. You can set it up however you want. As for the draft itself, we set it to start at a particular time and then made sure to all be online at the same time. And when it got to your pick, you had a minute to make your decision. And you can set that to be slightly shorter or longer if you want to. But I had a lot of fun with the draft. Like early on, it was quite easy. I went Isak, then Mbeumo, then Mateta. And my strategy was to go hard on attackers and pick defenders up later. But that minute felt quite short when you got later on in the draft because there was less players to choose from. But that was good. That's what I really liked about it. You could almost be a bit tactical. If people had already picked up lots of defenders, you could leave them till later. And the way that it's color-coded is really handy. So you've got like a ready pink colour for forwards, blue for defenders, purple for midfielders, and then like an orange for goalkeepers. So it was very clear early on in our draft that people had gone for a lot of defenders, therefore they wouldn't need so many later on. So I just kept picking attackers and that was my strategy. It really was a lot of fun. I'd highly recommend getting some friends together to give it a go yourself. Completely free. Just click that link in the description to get it downloaded or use the QR code on screen. There's other games involved as well, like their Pick'em game too. You can set up a league for that. There's loads of news, etc. within the app. Check it out. But the draft is really good. Give it a go during the international break. It doesn't matter when you start it will just run until the end of the season. And like I said earlier, fully customizable. Give it a go and let me know what you think. Let's talk about Arsenal next. So are Arsenal players like Havertz and Saka worse options on Wildcard if Ødegaard is confirmed injured? So for anyone that hasn't seen this yet, Ødegaard went off with an injury during the international break for Norway. We don't yet know whether he's going to be out at all, and if he is, how long it's going to be for. But we're going to speculate a little bit. So if he is out, it does make Arsenal a worse team in attack. I'm always conscious about not moving the dial too much. So if they're one of the best teams in the league right now, they don't suddenly become bottom half just because one player misses out. But it's going to be a bit of a transition because he hasn't missed many games over the last season or so, and he's such a big part in terms of how Arsenal do generate attacks. So I would be a little bit more worried about them than I am right now. The thing for me is the fixtures are such a key part about why we want Arsenal players in the first place. So let's say that Ødegaard was going to miss the next 4 games. Well, Man City away, I'm not expecting much anyway. Spurs away is going to be difficult if he is missing out because Rice is also suspended and Moreno's injured. So you could say they're missing 3 of their first choice midfield 3. So that's going to be kind of an advantage to Spurs a little bit. But I still think Arsenal will generate enough attacks against Spurs. And then you've got Leicester at home and Southampton at home. And for me, it just wouldn't matter if Ødegaard was missing out. I would still want double or triple Arsenal for those fixtures if I could. So it does have an effect on Arsenal, but I don't think it makes players massively worse, especially not Saka, because I think he's going to play in the same position. He's still going to be on penalties. His minutes are going to be great. The player which it probably does affect the most is Havertz, because if Jesus is fit and Ødegaard is missing out and Arteta needs to fill that midfield, well, one thing he can do is put Jesus as the 9 and then Havertz can play deeper. And I think Havertz is great as an FPL pick because he always plays and he often gets 90 minutes as well. But you do want him playing that number 9. We saw the numbers last year where he got a lot of the goals and assists was from that position. So if he's going to be moved to an 8 and have to play deeper, then I probably wouldn't want him as much. So as things stand, if Ødegaard misses the next 4 or 5 games, I think I would still want at least a double up for those 2 great games in 6 and 7. But it probably would put me off Havertz a little bit more than how I feel about him right now as an FPL pick. So Saka would probably still be in. I'd probably still want a defender or a goalkeeper because they're so good out of possession, and Rice is not going to be out for very long either. But yeah, let's keep an eye on it, and we'll come back to this on Friday when I've heard from Arteta, and hopefully he gives us some news on how long he's out for. But I think the player is probably Havertz. But overall, if I had Havertz for Leicester and Southampton at home and he was playing as an 8, probably wouldn't worry me that much. So is it madness to wildcard and still not include Salah? Now, I know a lot of people watching this will disagree, but I wouldn't call it madness. I still believe that long term, one of Haaland or Salah is probably the way to play it. I know that hasn't worked out so far. People with Salah and Haaland doing really well. And if I was wildcarding this week, I would include both of them. And I'd worry longer term about whether or not I should keep them. But I don't think I'd call it madness. The one thing to say, though, is it would feel weird to wildcard in Game Week 4 when Liverpool are about to have Forest at home, Bournemouth at home, Wolves away and Palace away and not go for their best attacker. And the thing for me, I would consider if you're not going to pick him up on wildcard in Game Week 4 is who you're going to captain in Game Week 5. Because falling back on Haaland as a captaincy option is never terrible, right? It's just not, even against Arsenal at home. But that's not the fixture I particularly want to captain him in. Because if any team is going to stop him scoring, it's going to be someone like Arsenal. You've got Spurs versus Brentford, but presumably not many people wildcarding are going to pick up the likes of Son. You know, Porro captain, that doesn't really excite me that much just because of Spurs' defensive capabilities. Like, I think Porro is a really good FPL pick, but I'm not sure I'd go as far as captaining him. Obviously, if you've got Trent, you could captain him against Bournemouth, but my feeling is always the same. If Trent's got a really good fixture, then so does Salah, and I'd always rather just captain Salah. So it's not madness. I think long term, one of Haaland or Salah drafts will probably end up being better, but that does rely on the likes of Isak and Watkins and, you know, those premium defenders like Gabriel, Saliba, Trent, Robertson continuing to do really well. Because if they don't, those set up with Haaland and Salah and cheaper options that are doing okay will do better, right? So after the first 3 game weeks, I know people will think it's absolutely crazy to not go for Salah and Haaland, but I think it's fine to drop one of them. I'm just not sure Salah would be the one for me in Game Week 4 just because of the fixtures. And then I look at Haaland and think, wow, I'd probably want to captain him this week, so I'd probably just pick up both. So not madness, but I don't think I would be doing it. So this question kind of follows on from the Arsenal one earlier. Is Porro a viable starting option against Arsenal, who will have no Rice and possibly no Ødegaard as well? Is he worth starting ahead of non-attacking defenders like Pau Torres and Lewis Dunk? Now again, it comes down to how much you think those two players will affect Arsenal as a whole. And to be fair, I think it's going to be difficult against Spurs, because Spurs like to load the midfield. We see Porro and Udogie taking up positions centrally quite a lot, and not having Rice and Ødegaard is going to be a problem. Now, I think Arsenal overall have set up in the same way for quite a while, to the point where I think the overall squad know how Arteta wants to play. But you take out two key players, it's not going to be easy. So what I will say is, I think Porro becomes a slightly better option this week. But do I see Spurs keeping a clean sheet? I don't know if it's gone that far the other way. Like before the Rice and Ødegaard news, I would say no chance for Spurs getting a clean sheet. There's now a better chance, but I'm not sure it's likely. Like if I was putting my money on Spurs getting a clean sheet or not, I think my money would be going on not still. So Porro has become slightly better, but I don't think he now becomes must play. Like in terms of the defenders mentioned, Pau Torres and Lewis Dunk, for Aston Villa in particular, keep an eye on news about Konza, because he picked up an injury last night for England. It doesn't look that bad, and he did walk off the pitch, so hopefully he'll be fine. But they do have a Champions League game between 4 and 5. So if he is slightly, or at a slight risk, basically, they might save him for the Champions League game. So if you're missing Konza and then Cash as well, I would then worry a little bit more about the Aston Villa clean sheet. Sorry, I'm looking at game week 5 there. But Aston Villa have got Everton at home, game week 4. And I think with Brighton in particular, like Ipswich at home is going to be one of the best defensive fixtures you can probably get all season. And Dunk does have goal threat from set pieces. It's not that he's a non-attacking option completely. So I would definitely play Dunk over Porro. Pau Torres is a little bit less exciting, but he may go and get you something from a set play. You never know. I think Everton at home is still better than Arsenal at home, even with Arsenal missing a couple of players. So my plan right now, I've got Porro on the bench, would be to play Konza if he's fit. So I'm still going to bench Porro, and I'm probably going to bench him ahead of Robinson as well, even though I'm not necessarily expecting Fulham to get a clean sheet against West Ham. I just still look at that Arsenal fixture and think there's no chance. I just don't see them getting a clean sheet. And it's also because it's, you know, North London derby. I think that plays into it as well. It can just be one of those games that gets a bit like basketball at times. Will Arteta let that happen? I'm sure he won't want to. We know how much he plays like, or sorry, how well they're set up out of possession. They're so good defensively. But it's the kind of game where it could happen. But then, if that does happen, maybe Porro's taking 6 shots or 5 shots, whatever it was, like he did against Newcastle. It is close. I think for Dunk, no chance. Pau Torres, maybe. But I would still back the defender you think is most likely to get a clean sheet. Because attack and returns are great. We all love it when one of our defenders scores. But the bread and butter of a defender is still their clean sheet potential. And I think, for me, Aston Villa and Brighton are still probably higher chance than Spurs this week. So what do you think about the West Ham run from game weeks 4 to 11? They're super underrated. I think Bowen and Kudus could go big soon. So we'll take a look at the fixtures in just a second. Just my thoughts on these two players individually. Bowen I really like. I think his price is decent. I love players that are always going to play. You don't have to be worried about them being benched and stuff like that. And if West Ham are going to score, I always expect Bowen to probably play a part in that. Obviously, he's not going to play a part in every single goal they score, but he will be involved in a large majority, more so than any other player in that West Ham team. So I like Bowen. With Kudus, I've still got the same thoughts as pre-season, that I think he looks better than what he's likely to deliver in FPL. Now, because he always plays as well and his minutes are good, over a season he is going to get quite a few returns and his overall points tally will be probably pretty decent. But often we buy players for stints of time, like 5 to 6 game weeks, and you're hoping they go big in that time. I'm just not sure Kudus is that player. And again, the stats versus the eye test always conflict here. Like if I bring up what Kudus has done so far this season, 0.09 non-penalty expected goals per 90, 0.21 expected assists, they're just not numbers to get excited about. And when you look at Kudus, he is 6.4 million. So already I'm thinking, and I know I keep going back to these players, but for kind of 0.6, 0.7 million more, I'm getting the likes of Eze and Mbermo, who are also absolutely nailed and on penalties as well. Now, to be fair, like West Ham have not had the greatest start fixture-wise. They've had Villa at home, City at home, and Palace away. So we probably shouldn't be expecting big things from them. But I think Kudus' numbers could be better. Like, let me just, I haven't actually checked this, and I'm probably going to look like an idiot now. But let's go to Jarrod Bowen, for example. Yeah, he's actually even worse. 0.07 non-penalty expected goals, 0.2 expected assists. So he hasn't been great either. But historically, Bowen has put up better numbers, and that's why I would trust him more. And I get it, right? Everyone's screaming at the screen right now that Kudus is great. I agree. I'm just not sure we will see that translate to many FPL returns. But for 6.4 million for a player that plays 90 minutes pretty much every game, I certainly don't hate him as a pick. In terms of the fixtures, they do look pretty good from 4 to 11, but I would argue the really good run starts from 7, because in 2 of the next 3 games, they're away games, so Fulham and Brentford. Not terrible fixtures, but you'd prefer games at home, right? And then the home game in 5 is Chelsea, and I think Chelsea defence will actually be all right this season. So I think these fixtures are fine, 4 to 6, but they're not ones I would go out of my way to target. But from 7, you've got Ipswich at home. Okay, another away game against Spurs. The Man United game is at home. And again, Man United might not be a fixture you target, but as other people have said, if you're going to face any of the teams that's going to play in the top, finish in the top half, Man United is probably one of those teams. Like, you wouldn't be worried about playing them, right? Forest away, then Everton at home as well. And then longer term, you've got like Leicester away in 14, Wolves at home in 15. But I think the 4 to 11 run looks better than it probably is. And I think actually it's 7 to 11, where you get to play Ipswich, Man United, and Everton at home. And then one of your away games is Forest, and then the other one is Spurs. So basically, short summary here, I don't think those fixtures are so good that you've got to go out and get West Ham players. But I think Bowen for, let me just check what price he is, 7.5 is a really nice option. It's just really difficult to fit him in. Like, if you want Salah and a premium midfielder and then one of or both of Eze or in Burma, you've got to go cheap at some point. Like a Smith Rowe or a Semenyo or a Rodgers, someone like that. And I just think this always happens in FPL. People will say this player's being slept on, but it's because other players are also options as well. And fixtures will always dictate what players you go for. And in the case of Bowen, you can get players that are just as nailed on with penalties for less money that also have pretty good fixtures. So I don't think they're underrated because I don't think they're amazing options, but I think they're fine. If you want to go for either of them, I don't think it would be a bad decision. So who to captain this week out of Haaland and Salah? Now, last week when people were asking me about Haaland versus Palmer, I said that when Haaland's not playing Liverpool or Arsenal, it's really difficult to go against him. In pretty much any other fixture, he's always going to be an option. And for me, it's kind of the same with Haaland versus Salah. Like, Salah is great, and if you want to go for him this week, you absolutely should. He's a really solid option. But I think, unless Haaland's got a much worse fixture, he's my go-to every single time. Like, the goal threat is just absolutely insane. And I don't think I can turn that down. And obviously, we've seen Salah keep pace with him so far because he's very creative as well. Will pick up assists, points for clean sheets, extra point for a goal, etc. But in a single game week, when I've got both of these options and they've got a similar fixture, I'm always going to go Haaland. And I was looking it up just a minute ago. So Haaland's goal threat so far is 0.94 expected goals per 90. Absolutely insane. Salah's stats are great too, right? I don't want to, I'm definitely not writing him off. 0.59 non-penalty expected goals per 90. Also 0.35 expected assists. He's so creative these days as well. Like, he's amazing. They both are. But I look at the fixtures. Brentford at home for City. Liverpool got Forest at home. Like, I think those two fixtures are pretty similar. I mean, arguably, with the numbers they had last year, you could maybe say that the Forest defence is slightly better. But I really don't think there's much in it. And so I'd always default to Haaland. There's really not that much more to it. I think the fact that De Bruyne is fit and playing at the moment as well is really helpful for him. But Liverpool have looked great so far. Like, honestly, you could flip a coin. If you said to me right now, I'm definitely captaining Salah, I don't know what you're talking about, I'd be like, fine, Salah's great too. So I would definitely go Haaland, but either works. Seriously, they're both brilliant options. That's why everyone's wildcarding them in. So is it okay to have no clue when to wildcard and just go week by week as long as you're putting out 11 good or decent players every week, and instead just pull the trigger when you have too many fires to deal with? Now, it is kind of handy to know when you might want to wildcard, because then you can change your transfer strategy. So for me, for example, I'm very likely to wildcard in game week 6. I know that in game week 5 I want to captain Salah, but from 6 onwards I might not want to own him. So I know it's fine for me to use my transfers to get Salah in game week 5, captain him, and then potentially look to wildcard without him. I might not do that, but that would be the current plan. So you can change your strategy, whereas if you don't know when you're wildcarding, you've kind of got to hedge your bets a little bit. So for my team, for example, right, if I didn't know when I was going to wildcard, I'd be thinking, well, I really want Salah in game week 5, but to get him, I've probably got to sell Saka, and I'm really going to want Saka from game week 6. So I might hedge my bets and just keep Saka and captain someone else in game week 5, even though they're not quite so good as Salah, which is not necessarily the wrong way to play, but I'm just pointing out why it's handy to know when you want to wildcard. In terms of wildcard windows, like so many people have asked me, I don't think there's a perfect window out there. Some people are going now to get Haaland and Salah. In game week 6, one of the key reasons is Arsenal. But even with Arsenal players, right, after that little run of Leicester, Southampton and Bournemouth, Leicester and Southampton at home, Bournemouth away, then they've got Liverpool, Newcastle and Chelsea, and 2 of those games are away from home. So as soon as the good games are finished after 3 game weeks, they've then got 3 tougher ones. Not fixtures that you necessarily need to go out of your way to sell Arsenal players, but you could delay the wild card into game week 8. So let's say, for example, you've got no Haaland, you're on a Salah draft, and you've got loads of Arsenal players already. You might want to just keep that until game week 7's out of the way, and then wildcard in 8, get Haaland back in before he plays Southampton at home in game week 9, and then reduce the amount of Arsenal players you've got. So there isn't a perfect window out there. Some people are going to hold it even longer, and I think it's fine to play like that. You've just got to hedge your bets a little bit more. But what I will say is, a lot of people will make out like you've got to wildcard now and you're going to be in so much trouble if you don't have like Haaland and Salah. But I just don't think that's going to be the case. Something else will happen in the future where people that have already wildcarded or are planning to wildcard in game week 6 like me get into trouble and loads of bad stuff happens and we will wish we had the wildcard. There is no right or wrong here. So I'm okay with kind of winging it a little bit, but it is kind of handy at some point to nail down when you're going to use it, because then that can dictate your transfer strategy. If you've enjoyed that video, make sure to give it a like and hit that subscribe button. Don't forget to check out Sleeper and start your draft today. Like I said, you can start it any time. Just get some friends together and it will run until the end of the season. You've also got their Pick'em game, which is completely free as well, where you can set up leagues and you basically predict the weekend games every single week. I've got a Let's Talk FPL one as well, which you can join. I'll put all the links in the description below. Otherwise, thank you very much for watching, and I'll catch you tomorrow for the team selection video.